there's kind of two main reasons why you might want to consider creatine. The first is that it really supports the ability to produce energy quickly. So if I were to snap my fingers, obviously that took like a millisecond to do. So that energy has not come from the breakdown of glucose. It has not come from the breakdown of fat. That sudden contraction is required by creatine phosphate within the muscle to provide energy. It's like an immediate system. So where it can be useful for runners is if you're running intervals, or you need to do a kick at the end, or you need to run up some hills and you need that immediate surge, having a greater reservoir of creatine in your muscle helps increase the ability to rapidly produce energy. The other really interesting benefit of creatine is that your rate of glycogen resynthesis is dramatically increased.
Your ability to recover from a session. If you're trying to increase your base endurance, run more, get better at it. Your ability to run more is going to be hindered by your ability to recover from the previous session. So if you're not able to synthesize that glycogen and get your stores back to where they need to be for that next session quickly enough, then you can't train as often.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Yeah.
I'm Gillian, and we're Renegades. And we
say
that together.
Okay. Got it.
You can say whatever you want. It's our homage to Conan O'Brien. He always starts his podcast that way. So it's like, hey. So I'll count you down. 3, 2.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Gillian.
And we're Renegades.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we practice the lost art of conversation to better understand what it means to be a runner and a human. And we do this with great guests. This episode, we have Gillian House and Joe Clark from Thrive Protein. And we're going to explore all about nutrition. We're going to dive into where runners get it right with nutrition, but really, where do we get it wrong? We're going to talk about the battle of the green powders, those green powders that we see all across the sport. We're going to talk about some actionable takeaways to help us improve our nutrition, to help us be better runners, to feel better, to thrive better. And we're happy that you've joined us. Welcome to the Renegade Podcast. I'm Todd Marentette, and with me,
I'm Harvey Steinhoff.
Ultra Harvey. You can find Harvey on Instagram at ultra_Harvey. And you know what, Harvey, I was thinking about this is if you check out Ultra Marathon Man on Instagram, go to my bio, I got links to all kinds of great discounts for all the friends of the podcast. We have discounts for Athletic Brew. We got discounts for the Windsor Waterfront Half Marathon. We got discounts for Path Projects, Shama Sandals, Paluva. Fantastic. So check it out.
We got everything covered.
All right. So I am going to let in Thrive. Let's see.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Joe. Gillian.
Sorry, we were having a little technical difficulty.
And I just want to let everybody know that tonight I am drinking the Ultimate Greens Peach Tea flavor. I love this one. I've been drinking it. Thanks, guys, for sending some down. When we reached out to yourselves, we really wanted to explore a couple topics. Like, it's the Renegade Podcast. We have a great audience of runners, trail runners, endurance athletes. But there's a common theme, I think, when we talk to our runners at Run Club and our friends, is runners can get nutrition wrong, like super wrong. So that's something we're really excited to have Joe and Gillian here from Thrive Protein talk to us about Thrive, their Thrive in running and endurance journeys, and help us understand what it means to have better nutrition. So thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the Renegade.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that I have to agree. Runners, runners totally, in my experience, don't always have the best nutrition. I definitely didn't as a recreational and competitive runner growing up. Poor nutrition, but also due to coaching and, what kind of information is your coach providing to you? If you're a younger athlete, especially, it might not really be something that a lot of coaches were well versed in during my generation. So nutrition was something I personally always struggled with as a young athlete, and now definitely as an older athlete, it's extremely important.
So let's just take that big jump. What were you lacking most when you in your previous time as an athlete?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So I think that overall, first of all, like just having very little basic understanding of nutrition, how to properly fuel my body for the amount of exercise I was doing. So caloric intake was much too low. There was absolutely no emphasis on protein in my diet whatsoever. I'm personally a very picky eater. I didn't have like a big meat eating life. I basically eat completely vegan now. So I wasn't into meat eating, had almost no protein in my diet. Um, Definitely didn't use any kind of electrolytes or any other supplements that are available nowadays. But yeah, the biggest thing I think for me was just not having any knowledge around proper fueling in general, like not enough carbs or anything because of low
I
calories.
think the total caloric intake was very, very low.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously, like when it boils down to it, which I'm sure you guys know, like the basics are your macronutrient split, right? Protein intake, carbohydrate intake, fat intake all need to be adequate for good performance. Then your micronutrient intake, like are you getting the necessary vitamins and minerals that you need? And then the caloric intake, like are you optimized for your performance? Is your body weight like meeting what your goals should be? And I think with Gillian's case, pretty bad on the micronutrient, macronutrient, and caloric intake, because you just when you were coming up, like one of your biggest things you told me was it was all about being light as possible. It was all about being skin and bone, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, like trying to maintain an unusually low body weight which did result in performance gains to begin with, but then due to like poor nutrition, it actually ended up resulting in a major drop off in performance and injury, and then actually led to the end of my competitive racing career because it was so poor. And had I had some proper nutrition coaching, I think growing up, I believe that the potential that could have been reached was a lot higher. And I mean, now I'm happy to be a recreational runner, and I'm happy to like be able to do the things that I can do in my mid 30s. Given the fact that I suffered from those injuries as a young athlete, and that it could have totally set me off to never be able to run again. But due to being able to have proper nutrition now, it allows me to be able to compete at, not a super high level, but I think a decent level. And I'm only going to keep getting better, I think, as I get older. So, yeah.
I'm going to jump on this before Todd gets back in here and pokes at it. I went down a little nutrition journey myself a few years ago, and I actually got on the macronutrition. And one thing that Todd's going to say is I went a little crazy with the chicken. He already gave me the heads up, and there he is back in there. He gave me the heads up on this, that he was going to poke fun at my chicken experience. I tried to eat as many rotisserie chickens as I could to try and get my proteins in. I could see Todd smiling in the background, even though he's kind of frozen there a little bit. But I wanted to jump on that and tell you that myself before he did. And to be honest, when I did go down that journey, I had the best running year of my life.
Were you aiming for a specific intake of protein when you were doing that?
So I actually hired a macro coach at the time, and I was given certain macro quantities to reach, and I did my best to reach them. But I found the more I did it, the hungrier I got, and the more I wanted to eat. It was very interesting to me. Like proper nutrition, when you're doing proper nutrition, you really can't eat enough.
No, for sure. I think
that was my experience.
I think that potentially protein is probably the biggest like neglected macronutrient for running. Like when we've done our events and things and we supply our products at running events, a lot come up to the protein powders and are like, should I be taking that? Do I need to be taking that? Whereas if you look at the resistance training clients, people that are doing that, they're so on top of that kind of thing. And yet the actual protein requirements for running and endurance training recovery are equivalent to that necessary to make resistance training gains. So there's been quite a few studies on protein requirements where they've taken groups of runners. There's been 3 studies that all use the same protocol, but they had them run a 5K. The next day they ran a 10K. Then the next day they ran 20K. And then they used various methods like nitrogen balance to assess what was the amount of protein that they required to optimize their recovery. And at the minimum end in all 3 studies, they needed 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight in order to recover muscularly from their training. So like that's a lot higher than I think most runners would probably consume. It's not quite as high as, the gram per pound that a lot of resistance training people will do, but it's still up there at 0.7 grams per pound, which is quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. I myself would say still to this day, I'm probably still lacking the protein then, just based off of what you said.
Yeah, and there's only been a handful of studies on this, but all the 3 major ones all concluded the exact same figure. And these are from like highly specific validated means of testing. So it's quite conclusive that is the kind of optimal amount that is needed to recover properly.
Hey Renegades, let's talk about Palooza, game changers in the world of footwear. Founded by primal living legend Mark Sisson and his son Kyle, Palooza crafts minimalist shoes that let your feet move the way nature intended. Their 5-toe design, like the Strand lightweight trainer, gives each toe its own space display, grip, boosting balance and strength, and proprioception with every step. 0 drop soles and just right cushioning that deliver that barefoot feel without sacrificing comfort or style. Whether you're crushing a trail run, hitting the gym, or just living your daily life, Palooza's not just about function, they've nailed style, making these shoes versatile enough for a date night or a dog walk. Palooza's redefining how we walk one liberated foot at a time. Curious? Head to palooza.com and scan your feet for a perfect fit and use the code RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. Step into freedom. Check out Palooza today. Your feet will thank you.
Let's start with the Thrive journey then. Give us a little background of how you guys started Thrive, why you started Thrive, what your goals are.
Yeah. So we met working in a fitness facility, before we became a couple, and we both had like a passion for health and fitness in general, which is why we were working in that facility in the first place. And basically like something that I personally found, so Joe is from the UK. We went over there for a visit, and I found that there was like a huge selection of like plant-based products in general there, like much greater than Canada, and lots of variety. So basically, I personally, that inspired me to say, like, why isn't that kind of opportunity available to Canadians? So then what we took away from that was we came back over to Canada. We were still working at the gym, and the gym ended up shutting down. So we decided that we're going to use our mutually beneficial skills to launch our own business. And a lot of that was also inspired by the fact that I had started selling supplements for another company that I didn't really feel like I could stand behind as much. And it really inspired us to make a product line that we 100% stand behind, that was going to provide that market to Canadians that was not available, and products that we use ourselves that we're looking for that weren't already on the market the way that we wanted to see them, like clean ingredients, amazing taste, and the macronutrient profiles that we were looking for in those supplements.
Joe's from the UK. We have to do a little bit quick bragging here. This is Todd and I actually at the London Marathon this year. And of course, we were part of the Guinness Book of World Records for the most finishers of a marathon. So I just wanted to share that with you since you said Joe was from the UK.
Very cool.
That's fun.
Yeah. It was an exciting run. Not my favorite run, but what can I say? Todd is getting faster than me, and I don't like it.
That's because I thrive protein, Harvey.
Yeah. It's all those runs to that provincial park.
Exactly. Yes. You were doing excellent, Harvey. I was cutting in and out. So like, apologies. There's no worries. You know what? We love the London Marathon. And you know what we didn't love about it? Joe, the British weather is supposed to be cloudy and cold in April. It was 80 degrees and sunny. This is ridiculous.
I think they've had a hot season. Like, when I speak to my family back at home, the weather there seems to parallel here. So like when it's scorching here, it often is scorching over there. But these last couple of years in Britain, it's been hot.
Yeah, and it was definitely a hot week. We had a great week sightseeing, traveling all around the UK. It was fantastic. And, you know, before I cut out, there was a few things I heard. And you talked about macronutrients, micronutrients, caloric intake. Like, help us understand what a macro, micro, what the caloric intake needs to be, and like vitamins. How do they all interplay with each other? As a layman runner who doesn't know anything about nutrition other than Harvey ate way too much chicken in 2019. We'll go back to that after.
Yeah, we went down that road.
Yeah.
I heard a little bit.
So of course, yeah. So like your macronutrients, macro being large, it's protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So in an optimal nutrition program, you would be getting the adequate amount of those three macronutrients. We can look at exactly what those are after. But then the micronutrients is your vitamins and your minerals, your phytonutrients, all of those things that essentially contribute to you having basic nutritional health. In the sense, you could be hitting your macronutrients perfectly, but if it's all from processed foods, then you'll be very deficient in your micronutrient intake. And then your overall caloric amount, meaning are you actually consuming enough just total energy to meet your performance needs? You could have the perfect macronutrient split, the perfect micronutrient intake, but be consuming way too many or way too few total calories, which is not going to be beneficial on either end of the spectrum. So if you can simply get those kind of three things somewhat optimal, you're going to perform at your best.
Those three things are the three things that we got to balance. And, you know, we started off the conversation and I dialed out a little bit with bad internet, but what do we get wrong with those three things? So I hear protein, carbs, and fat. As runners, reading Runner's World, reading all our favorite ultra running magazines, they seem to contradict each other. Sometimes we should be low carb, some saying that we should be high fat, some saying that we need carbohydrates. We're lost. Help us wander this trail. If there's a question there, I don't know. Is there a question there?
But yeah, for sure. I think there is definitely a trend right now, isn't there, for the super high fat diet in many things, running, resistance training, all those kinds of things. But in the bottom line, you need intake of all three macronutrients. If you're going to completely deplete yourself of carbohydrate, you're going to massively suffer in any kind of exercise that requires any kind of intensity. Like basic rapid energy production is fueled by glucose. So if you're going to only eat fat and protein, bottom line is you're not going to perform well when you're up threshold and above. Like you might perform well in ultras because you may not need that glycogen reliance spiking as quickly. But when you're doing intense running, you need carbohydrate. But you also need adequate fat intake because that's a huge resource for energy. So you really do need to be getting both of those from your energy perspective. Obviously, the fat is also contributing from a health perspective, hormone support, all those basic things. So you've got to have at least 20% of your daily calories coming from fat. Then we spoke briefly earlier about the amount of protein that you need. So if you need to get, let's say, a minimum of 0.75 grams per pound or 1.65 grams per kilogram of body mass per day, then that kind of takes care of that element. Then you calculate what are the total calories you need to maintain your body mass, and the remainder of that is your carbohydrate. So although that sounds quite complicated in theory, it's not really. If you went for a balanced profile of 20% fat, 0.75 grams per pound of protein, and filled the rest in with carbohydrate, you'd be in a very good place for a balanced nutrition profile for running. If you want to go on the extremes of either end, you can, but there's detriment to it.
Well, my math right now is probably pretty good as my my marathon math when you get to about mile 20 and you start to count and try to figure out how much more you have to go. So let's say a runner who's 70 kilograms. What does that look like for a 70 kilogram runner?
So for protein, so there's two things we have to calculate. If this runner is 70 kilograms, what is his caloric needs to maintain his body mass? Let's just say it's 2,500 calories. So you would take that 2,500 calories and you'd take 20% of that. That's 500 calories a day from fat. Now, obviously, to get your grams, you have to divide that by 9. Now, before we get too complicated, I do have designed an actual calculator on our website where you can literally just plug in your body, set your fat intake, and it literally spits out the numbers that you need for each 3 based on the latest scientific literature. So it basically computates all 3 of those. If you want to keep going down the rabbit hole of how to actually do it on pen and paper, we certainly can, but it sounds quite heavy when I say it out loud.
I think that sounds like a good thing to put in the show notes there, Todd. The link to the calculator.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It makes it so much easier.
Simplifies the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to know how many calories do you need in a day, right? So if you don't have that information, then it does give you instructions on how you can figure that out. You need to know what your body weight is. You need to be able to see, is it changing over 10 days or so based on what you're eating. If it's going up, you're eating too many calories, you're not at maintenance. If it's going down, then you're eating too little, you're not at maintenance. You need to find what's your maintenance calorie amount so that you can use the calculator properly in that respect.
Because although this does sound complex, you'll see a lot of simplified models that may say eat 30% of your daily calories from protein, 20% from fat, and 50% from carbs, say. That's great. In fact, it's simplistic, but that may not meet the adequate amounts for your protein intake. So that's why it's a little bit more nuanced, and the studies out there on research are normalized for body weight. So that 1.65 grams per kilogram of body mass, that's where that figure comes from. So it is a little bit complicated to explain in this context, but it's very simple when you plug into the calculator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely check that out. I think back to maybe my very start of my running journey with Harvey, and we met Dr. Mark Kugazella, who, explained to us about nutrition for a healthy life and to feel better. Maybe I juxtapose that nutrition advice into training and racing advice. And the advice was basically a lower carbohydrate, lots of proteins, lots of healthy fats, lots of green vegetables. And it was very contradictory because I was used to eating lots of carbohydrates, pastas, pizzas. And when I switched my diet, I went to more meat, lots of vegetables, try to cut down the starches in the potatoes. And what I found was my body composition transformed almost immediately. Over a couple of weeks, I started to lose some of the fat I was carrying. But then I went into training mode and racing mode, and I would try to race with low carbs. So I would use Generation UCAN, and I would probably have 1 UCAN every hour during a marathon. And I was wondering why I was crashing. And some of the other coaches that we had on, our friend Floris Gearman's Todd, you're not taking enough carbohydrates in during the race. But if you think about that, we got fueling and eating during your training, everyday life. Then before your event, during your event, and how do you recover? If you think of those 4 things, what elements are common to those 4 things, and what do you actually have to do a little bit different in each of those stages?
Yeah, no, so good question. So the first thing you started saying there was kind of the super high fat, neglecting the carbs. So if we were to take kind of how that might approach, you said before racing, in general day-to-day eating, if you're really sacrificing that carbohydrate intake for the expense of fat, you're going to be training essentially depleted in your glycogen, which is your stored carbohydrate in your muscle. So with that depletion, you're not going to be able to produce energy nearly as quickly as somebody who has ample glycogen in the muscle. That's just essentially why we have muscle glycogen. It's so we can rapidly produce energy. So if you're out on a run and you've basically fully depleted your muscles of that energy source, then you're relying only or much more heavily upon the fat, which sounds great in theory to be kind of, fat adapted. But at all times, you're burning fat and carbohydrate at different rates depending on your intensity. You're going to take carbohydrate essentially out of the equation by leaning so heavily on the fat. You are going to have less overall substrate to burn, and it's going to be a lot slower. Then heading into the race, you can then start obviously using that fueling, using that carbohydrate, that's great. But if you're heading into it completely depleted because of your low carbohydrate diet, it's a bit too little too late at that point. And all of those glycogen storing mechanisms, which are trained and adapted through higher intensity training, bolstered by a diet with carbohydrate, aren't going to suddenly upregulate just because you've decided to add in a little bit of carbs last minute, which is the kind of danger of approaching, any endurance performance with a super low carbohydrate diet. I do understand the theory of it when you're running 4, 5, 6 hours and going really long distance. But when we're looking at those shorter distances, 3 hours and below, you're really shooting yourself in the foot with your potential. All the training along the way as well, if you've done it in a depleted state, has most likely suffered quite heavily from the lack of substrate in your training. I don't know if I answered the question fully there, but that was my thoughts on carbohydrate.
No, you absolutely did. And I'll go back to something that you mentioned there that kind of sparked my interest. There was a couple things. The first thing is practicing your carbohydrate intake before a race. So like if you're a fat adapted or you're trying to be fat adapted in the low carb during your training, you run fasted and you show up to race day, think, well, I'll just pop some extra gels during the race and everything's going to be great. It's actually not going to be great. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's kind of two reasons behind that. One, you're going to be going into the race without enough glycogen stored in the muscle. That's not an overnight adaptation. That takes ongoing carbohydrate feeding. And the second thing is that if you kind of say you wanted to just add in those carbs last minute, your actual ability to synthesize the glycogen to a top rate is also going to be limited because you don't do it in training. It's kind of like the specificity principle, right? Like if you always train fat adapted, you're going to have far worse glycolytic, as in glucose breakdown reactions than somebody that trains with carbs. If somebody that trains with a high carbohydrate diet or just a regular diet with the fueling, their ability to break down glucose for energy is going to be far faster, far more efficient, and far more effective than somebody that decides to chuck some in last minute. So there are definitely like I see there are pros and cons to both dietary approaches, but just looking at specificity alone, if you train without carbs and then you suddenly expect your body to run great on carbs, it's probably not going to.
And you also have to look into like the other aspects of the training too. Like throughout your training, if you're not doing like gut training, for example, if you're not practicing ingesting X amount of carbs, like you could experience some major GI distress during your race that you're not used to because you haven't been taking gels or drinking a carb beverage. And also your performance throughout your training could be in a decline, like Joe was saying. That maybe you would have made some extra gains during your build phase or throughout your peak phase had you been fueling with carbohydrate during that time, but you won't know because you'd be trying to become fat adapted by eating this low carb diet and not fueling properly. So, the only way you can find that out is if you end up jumping into a marathon and totally bonking, and then you're like, hey, maybe I need to make some changes during my next training block because this low carb thing didn't work for me. So
yeah, and I think that potentially some people think that by eating like a higher carbohydrate diet that they are inefficient at burning fat, whereas that's just not the case. Like we see as people get fitter, their ability to utilize fat at higher percentages of their VO2 max greatly increases, regardless if they're fat adapted or not. You're still going to be very efficient at burning fat. It just means you then also have that glucose availability as well. So you'll be able to produce energy through two substrates versus just basically taking one away and massively impacting the amount of total energy that you can produce.
Now, if you are an athlete or a person who's trying to reduce their carbohydrate intake, just because as we age, we like to hang on to the our fat a little bit more. And it seems to be when those carbs, we eat them, it goes to fat immediately. I don't know why it stores it. But if you are trying for like a low carbohydrate diet, how would you break up a week or break up meals so that you actually are dabbling into each one during your training to prepare you for race day? What would your advice be on that?
That's a good question. I'd just like to circle back to the fact that you mentioned that consuming carbohydrate equals fat gain. So fat gain, just to clarify this, because that isn't accurate in the sense that fat gain is a product of more energy going into your system than is coming out. So what's probably happening is that person is just eating loads of food. Yes, they might consist of carbohydrates because they taste good. But what I'm basically trying to say is that you don't gain fat because you eat carbohydrate. You gain fat because you've eaten too much food. So there isn't a need to run a low carb diet to keep good body composition. That is not the case. When you mentioned earlier that you switched to a higher fat, higher protein diet and you lost loads of fat and your body composition looked great, that's because your overall caloric intake decreased, not because you changed towards more fat, less carbs. It was just that's the kind of basics of energy balance in the body. It's not whether it's carbs or fat, that doesn't change your body weight. It's the amounts of them in a caloric intake. So then to lead on to the next question, how would we balance a training week while still trying to eat not a lot of carbohydrate? My advice would be don't try and not eat a lot of carbohydrate. Try and just get your macronutrients under control so you're not gaining weight when you do eat carbohydrate. You should have balance in your overall diet so that you can eat all of the macronutrients while staying at the same body weight.
Now, that being said, there are other aspects to like weight gain and stuff that are out there, right? Like obviously this doesn't apply to every single person in the world. That's for the general population. But like I find for me personally, when I'm doing a high level of training, I'm probably under a bit more stress. And maybe that stress is causing like my body to not lose weight. So sometimes during periods of like high training volumes, that's probably not the best time to be trying to lose weight at the same time. It can put your body under a lot of stress if you're in some kind of caloric deficit at that time, and you're already using your training volume as a stressor in your life. You have other stressors in your life, and then suddenly you've got this like, oh, actually, I'm going to stop eating as much food as well. So just from my personal experience, I don't recommend trying to alter your diet during periods of high training. It might be a better time to do it during the off season, whenever that is. Just, yeah.
Okay. Well, like you see this a lot on social media, you're in the magazines, like the meat diet, like people they switch and they'll say, you know what, all I'm going to eat is I'll eat as much meat as humanly possible. And they end up losing weight. Are we saying that they're losing the weight because their caloric intake is down and it just happens to be that you just can't eat that much meat because you fill yourself up? So like you might have like two steaks.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
And
okay,
also,
okay, interesting.
So like, yes, some people will mention that protein burns more energy when you eat it, the thermic effect of food and things of that nature. And like, yes, that's true to a tiny extent. But overall, yes, they're losing weight because they are eating fewer calories. The energy, like the body breaks down all macronutrients into energy. When there is a surplus of energy, we store it as body fat. So it doesn't matter if you suddenly switch to all protein and that's the miracle why you've lost weight. The miracle you lost weight is because you've just taken less energy in. So
you're feeling full for longer. And also, a big thing that I've noticed with people that I know is that they see this massive initial weight loss from like cutting carbs out and stuff. Like a lot of that is glycogen stored in the muscle, and it's water from your muscle cell, because we know that you're going to hold on to a little bit more water weight if you're properly fueled. So they've lost this glycogen that's going to help their performance, going to help them as a runner. And then they're like, oh my God, I lost 5 pounds. Well, great. But now your performance is probably going to suffer because of that.
The first thing to go when we hit a caloric deficit is your glycogen stores. So as soon as you enter a state where you're in negative energy balance, the first weight you will lose is your muscle glycogen, which is obviously detrimental to performance. That's not to say never lose weight, but that's why people suddenly go, oh, I went low carb and now I'm like 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
Okay, but you've just stripped out 5 to 8 pounds of glycogen from your muscle. You haven't actually lost any weight. You've just taken away all your fuel.
You've taken away all your fuel. Okay, that's super interesting. Super interesting. Maybe that's why I bonked during all my marathons. No, I tease. You mentioned bonking the first, and all new runners and anyone listening to the podcast, if you're out training for your first marathon, definitely heed the advice that Gillian and Joe are offering here, because you can learn a lot of mistakes of how not to fuel and set yourself up for a big hole during your marathon. And then when you do bonk out there, you'll be like, well, I trained for 16 weeks, 18 weeks. Why didn't I pay more attention to the nutrition aspect of it? And I think that was one area that I thought it was fun to explore with two folks like yourself, of your experience, and to keep runners out of that trouble. So it's balancing the macro, the micro, and ensuring that you have the right caloric intake so that you're not eating too many calories and showing up to the start line with an extra 10 kilograms on you than you need to, because then you got to carry that for 26.2 miles.
100%. And you can extrapolate that same process across all endurance sports or any sport or any physical activity. If you can kind of hit those pillars, you're going to be doing well from a nutritional perspective.
And the micronutrients we haven't even really touched on, but that's basically like vitamins, minerals. A lot of people take a multivitamin on a daily basis because maybe they're not eating the best that they can. Obviously, we fully stand behind the greens powder that we use, and this is more bioavailable, something that's more easily absorbed by the body than something like a synthetic vitamin. But also, I personally use it for convenience. So, we all know that we need to eat a lot of vegetables, leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. Do we all have time to do it? I mean, I'm trying to train to, an hour and a half to 2 hours every day, whether that's all running, whether that's a combination of running and strength training, whatever. And then I also have children to take care of. Some people have, full-time jobs, they have school, they have whatever. Maybe they're not doing the best they can as far as prepping vegetables or whatever. So we drink a greens blend for that purpose. And it has all these different ingredients in it that helps us make sure we're getting those micronutrients, which are just as important as making sure you're hitting your macronutrient goals too.
Renegades, strap in for a gear drop that's going to supercharge your running and style. We are stoked to spotlight Path Project's latest apparel, built for runners who live for the grind and want to look damn good doing it. First up, the James Peak shirt, a trail-ready beast with Toray Air Prime Flex fabric. It's crazy breathable, sweat-slaying, and stretchy, keeping you fresh from the sunrise sprints to those post-run hangouts. Next, the Fortuna Hybrid short. This is your do-it-all wingman, crafted with Delta Weave, recycled nylon and spandex. These water-resistant, quick-drying shorts are perfect for the run, swims, or just chillin', with slick pockets for your essentials. And don't you sleep on their famous Graves PX running short, re-engineered with Featherlight Prime Flex fabric and secure pocketing. They're built for crushing all your miles. Founded in 2018, Path Projects delivers runner-first gear with soul. Check them out at pathprojects.com. Make 2025 your fiercest running year yet. And thank you to Path Projects. You can use the code TRP10 for 10% off your order for a limited time. So check them out. I think that's a great parlay into that next question that we wanted to explore is the greens, the battle of the greens. What we're seeing play out there seems to be lots of green drinks, green supplements, and they're all focused on these micronutrients that you're sharing with us, the vitamins and minerals. What stands out? When you were coming up with Ultimate Greens, did you dive into the science and saying, here is the ideal balance of these types of nutrients to help everyday life? Walk us through that. Help us understand how you came up with the Ultimate Greens mix.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the body thrives upon diversification in terms of what you give it in terms of lots of different fruits, vegetables, all come with their different colors in nature. And within those are your different vitamin, mineral profiles, different phytonutrients, all those different things. So from a zoomed out perspective, if you're consuming just a broad array of fruits and vegetables each day, you're gonna be covering all bases. We didn't get too granular, did we, upon we need to make sure it's got X% of this, X% of that, X% of that, because we know if we take a really nice broad range of different vegetables from the land, the sea, root vegetables, leafy greens, everything, combine it all together, you're definitely going to be getting everything that the body needs, because that's how we're built to receive nutrients. So with that, we basically sort, I think we have 54 variations
over
of
50
sure. So like seaweeds, like all sorts of different things, all that offer different
like antioxidants. We even have like an essential fatty acid blend inside the greens. Lots of variety as far as cruciferous vegetables. There's herbs and extracts as well, like ginseng. Lots of different things that maybe people are taking as separate supplements that all come together in this nice blend that you could take, 1 to 2 to 3 times a day if you really want to. But also we really wanted to make it taste amazing. So there's a lot of blends out there on the market that maybe like people don't mind the taste of a green juice, but there are many people that do not quite enjoy drinking a green juice. So something that we really love about ours is that it tastes really good. It doesn't have any synthetic added vitamins in it, no artificial sweeteners. And it has that nice variety that you're not going to find in the average grocery store. So I'm not going to go over to my grocery store and buy like a bunch of ginseng and like, I don't know, like ashwagandha and like stuff like that. Things that you see in the greens and mix it all together and eat it every day. But if I can just scoop it into a glass, drink it, and it tastes really good, then I'm happy and I know I'm getting what I need each day.
Essentially an insurance policy on top of an already decent diet.
Yeah, like we're not saying don't eat vegetables.
No, like do the best you possibly can with your dietary intake and then top it off with a super greens blend at the end, just to make sure. Because the issue with the multivitamin approach, right, is that all these vitamins and minerals are originally found in their plant carrier. And if you strip away all that and you just provide the body with a synthetic nutrient, I think what they find a lot of the time is it just gets peed out or it's not absorbed in the way it should be. Whereas if you literally dehydrate a plant food and chuck it in a drink and drink it, you're clearly going to get most of the nutrient benefit of that food. And that's exactly what the greens is. It's just an array of dehydrated plants. Not to make it sound particularly tasty there, but...
No, I'm going to go back to something that, Gillian mentioned, though, like, what I heard and what runners hear, Gillian, is that we can have a crappy diet and have some ultimate greens, and we're going to be okay. We don't have to do any of the work. That's not what you're saying.
Like,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
No, it's not definitely not what we're saying.
And honestly, before we had the 2 kids, we used to have this huge plate of vegetables every single night. We both worked super hard into fitness and nutrition prior to our business. And we'd have this giant plate of vegetables every night. We'd take the time to cut it all up. And, that started to go by the wayside after the first child. Now, after the second child, it's definitely not something that by the end of the day,
we even did that.
Yeah. By the end of the day, we're like exhausted. And we've been working all day long on this business. We've been like dealing with these 2 children. And I'm like, oh, so I literally same time every night have the greens that when I used to have that big plate of vegetables. Do I get vegetables in other parts of my diet throughout the day? Yeah. Like we do some food prep on, the weekend and we get some vegetables in our other meals. But that big plate that we used to have, we just don't have time.
In the ideal world, we'd be doing both.
Yeah.
Because... But yeah, you do get busy, but 100% like layer in as many vegetables as possible and then top it off with the greens and you've done your best effort.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want to be advising people to not eat whole food, vegetables and fruit.
Fast food.
That's
just take the greens, you're good.
Number one is always the fact that we are a supplement company, like the word supplement, like it shouldn't be the basis of a diet. It's just something that's added on top of an already good diet. Yeah.
Well, we like that. And Gillian, you mentioned something. So I did try athletic greens for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And it was an acquired taste. It was like a chalky green taste. I've been trying the ultimate greens. My favorite so far is peach tea. I like the cherry flavor. It's fantastic. Yeah, it doesn't have that. It doesn't taste like a green drink whatsoever. So you nailed it with
No,
the taste. I'm ultra impressed here. And I'm enjoying mine
that's
right now.
great. That's great. And I mean, we love the peach tea. That's our favorite too.
It's the one.
But like that is something that we hear all the time from people, is that they can't believe that they're drinking something healthy. And honestly, the first time that once we like had the formulation that we wanted and we started to sample flavors, we were like, oh my gosh, like, this is so good. Like we couldn't believe it either. So
Well, there was something that you mentioned. Maybe we'll go back to it. It's supplements that are being derived from whole foods. So you said that you dehydrate plants, and that's how you're getting the ingredients to the ultimate greens. Juxtapose that into synthetics. You mentioned that if you're getting those vitamins and minerals from synthetic, that your body may not absorb those as efficiently. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely data out there to support that if the vitamins and nutrients are composed within their original vehicle, like i.e. the fruit or vegetable, the absorption is going to be far superior to just a pill that has had the vitamins and minerals synthetically produced and put into it. That, like, we're not meant to run on pills. We're meant to run on actual fruit and veg, and this is the closest thing supplementary to that because it is derived from that. But yeah, exactly that. Like, you can't just trick the body into giving it a synthetic source of vitamins and minerals and think that's going to suffice, because it's had everything about it stripped away other than just that thing, and then the absorption is not going to be nearly as good.
That's excellent. That's some good stuff there.
That doesn't stand for all vitamins and minerals. Like if you take like a magnesium supplement, you will certainly absorb it. If you take a calcium supplement, you will certainly absorb it. But when you're getting into all of the different kind of phytonutrients, your B vitamins, D, A, all of those different ones are going to have better absorption through an actual plant material than a synthetic capsule.
That is fantastic. And you both mentioned that you're still training. What are you both training for?
You can go.
Okay. So before I found out I was pregnant most recently, I decided I wanted to tackle a half marathon. I've never run a full marathon before. When I used to compete, I was a middle distance runner, mostly track and cross country, which was a number of years ago now. So the furthest race that I ever ran at that time was, I think, 10 miles. And I've never raced a half marathon. I feel like as I've been getting, so I'm in my mid 30s now, and I feel like as I'm getting older, I do want to try and tackle those longer distances. And I decided to start with a half because I know the marathon is a beast in itself. It's a whole other like beast. And I absolutely love running. It's like my favorite thing. So if I'm going to be able to go for longer, great. But my body just went through a full pregnancy, so I'm ready to start with a half. And yeah, I haven't actually selected one yet. I know there's a lot of great races out there, and I have lots of running friends that I talk to ask, what's the best half to run. Have not scheduled that in yet because I'm still building back from the pregnancy. Doing lots of zone 2 runs and building a base, and now just starting to work on some more race specific runs to get that half. I'm going to do a time trial in about 8 weeks. So yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And yeah, I would say coming back from having a baby, you're on the right approach. Start slow, build up. There's no hurry. There's lots of races in the world. There's lots of marathons that you can always build to if that's something that you're thinking of. But that half marathon is a perfect distance because you can still race it. You get that feeling of, running a race over 20 kilometers or running, a long distance. It feels good. And I would say if you're looking for a half marathon, they've got the Windsor Waterfront coming Sunday, September 14th down here in Windsor, Ontario. That we'd love to have you down and to come race that. We're trying to talk Runkle Mark into signing up for that race. That'll be his first race, hopefully, but we'll see about that.
Hearing about the Windsor one, I've heard on some of your previous episodes, and it sounds like it's going to be a really nice scenic route along the river there. And I'm curious to know how it goes because I know that they don't have a full marathon in Windsor, and that it would take a lot to shut down I guess that whole part of the city, it can be probably quite busy there. So, but it sounds like it's a family friendly event, which obviously we're a family business. So we like to get the whole family out for we do lots of events, in our local region where we actually go to the race and we, give out samples and talk about our products there. And we bring the whole family along. So.
Well, and you're from the Collingwood area, right? So you got a lot of hill training that we don't get down here, right? So you got some nice hills, some elevation.
That's right. Yeah. I asked, do the Blue Mountains count as elevation training? And everyone said,
Yes.
no, they don't. Altitude training.
We count.
Doesn't
we
count
counted,
as
Gillian.
altitude training.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm thinking here, and I know Harvey, his internet dropped out, so no worries. It'll be seamless. We'll cut it in out, and we'll stitch together a great episode. There's nothing to worry about here. Anything from your side that you guys want to cover that we haven't covered yet? Anything you want to talk about? I can work that into the episode. I was just gonna, yeah, go ahead.
There were a couple of things that we thought that might be beneficial for runners. Was this probably isn't thrown around massively in running discussion, but the potential benefits of creatine monohydrate. Obviously it's exploded recently in the world of cognitive support and has always been a backbone of resistance training, but there are some super useful benefits for the running enthusiast of creatine monohydrate as well. So that's a potential thing that is well worth consideration for most athletes and even endurance athletes. Other one that's quite probably used by a lot of runners already is an electrolyte blend, particularly in the mad heat that we're now experiencing, just to counteract some of that massive sodium loss, potassium loss. So those would be kind of two things that we would potentially recommend, aren't they? For sure. We would certainly be willing to shed a little bit more light on if you're interested at all.
Those are two great topics. Now, I'm with you. I would say most runners don't really understand creatine, or the creatine monohydrate complex. Is that what it's called? So whatever you can do to help us educate us on creatine and what is it, the benefits it brings to runners. We've all heard about the cognitive benefits for sure, but what's the latest science showing about endurance athletes?
So there's kind of two main reasons why you might want to consider creatine. The first is that it really supports the ability to produce energy quickly. So if I were to snap my fingers, obviously that took a millisecond to do. So that energy has not come from the breakdown of glucose. It has not come from the breakdown of fat. That sudden contraction is required by creatine phosphate within the muscle to provide energy. It's like an immediate system. So where it can be useful for runners is if you're running intervals or you need to do a kick at the end or you need to run up some hills and you need that immediate surge, having a greater reservoir of creatine in your muscle helps increase the ability to rapidly produce energy. So it can be extremely useful, particularly on those higher intensity training sessions. The other really interesting benefit of creatine is that when you supplement with creatine monohydrate, your rate of glycogen resynthesis is dramatically increased. And I came across, doing the prep for this podcast, 3 studies that were extremely beneficial. I was quite shocked at the rate of glycogen resynthesis in them. One of them in particular, they depleted some runners, as in they had them exercise to basically, exhaustion, depleted the carbohydrate in the muscle. And then there are 2 groups, one that just ate carbs and one that ate carbs and creatine. And then the carbohydrate and creatine group, they resynthesized glycogen 82% faster within 24 hours, which if you're running back-to-back days, that's huge in terms of your ability to refuel before the next day. So I found that to be extremely interesting.
And we know too, that your ability to recover from a session, if you're trying to increase your base endurance, you need to do as many sessions. The more running, the better, right? We know if you just run more, you're going to get better at running. As long as you're training with your right programming and stuff, and you can avoid injury. Run more, get better at it. Your ability to run more is going to be hindered by your ability to recover from the previous session. So if you're not able to synthesize that glycogen and get your muscles or your stores back to where they need to be for that next session quickly enough, then you can't train as often, and you can't, some people are going to train twice a day when they're trying to perform at a high level, right? Or maybe they're training 12, I go to bed, I've trained, just before bed, and I have to train again the next morning. Like, it's a really quick turnaround. That's when it's going to become really important as well.
What do you think that maybe creatine got a bad name? Because when I first heard creatine, it was Mark McGuire, baseball, the home run in the 90s, home run competition, but it wasn't creatine. It was performance enhancing drugs. So everyone kind of got nervous that he'll take creatine and you're going to get massive. And I think that's one aspect that runners kind of avoid. That would be like, if I take this creatine, I might actually build bulk. Is there any truth to that?
So there is truth that you may retain between 1 to 3 pounds of water when you're taking creatine. Now, in actuality, does 1 to 3 pounds have much of a detriment on performance? I would say probably not, when considering the associated benefits that come with it. So you will see some immediate weight gain from additional water. Now, there are like muscular hydration benefits that come with that water, so it's not just wasted water. But that is one thing that will happen. You will gain a couple of pounds, and then it'll stop immediately, because as the creatine gets loaded into the muscle, it pulls water into it. So there is an immediate gain. Will you get like jacked? Like, no. You won't suddenly get really jacked, but you might gain a little bit of muscle. Like, and that muscle, if it's accompanied by, running training, should be quite running specific. Like, if you're running any kind of distance, I would assume most runners out there are doing some form of resistance training to accompany their running. And if they are, the creatine is also going to be hugely beneficial for the performance within those sessions, which then means better resistance training performance, potentially better running economy, better overall running performance. So there are some really big indirect attributes of creatine as well. But no, you won't suddenly get huge. You
have to actually be if you're going to put on muscle, you have to not only be in a caloric surplus, you also have to have adequate protein intake, and you have to be training in the gym, resistance training, more frequently, I would have thought, than most runners do, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, endurance training.
Runners don't like any resistance training. we try to avoid that at all costs, right? No, I tease.
Yeah, no, it seems to be a bit of a myth, isn't it? The creatine is just suddenly going to make you jacked, or that anything suddenly make you jacked other than steroids. If it were that easy, everyone in the gym would just be jacked.
People think that protein powder too. You get that all the time. I go to races, I have a table set up, and not only do runners not get enough protein in their diet, but they also are afraid that if they start drinking a protein shake, they're going to suddenly put on a whole bunch of muscle. I hear it all the time, especially from friends of mine that are looking for some nutrition advice. They're like, oh, well, I can't drink a protein shake, I'm going to get jacked. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
What will make you jacked is lifting loads of weights all the time.
Well, so there we go, runners. You have nothing to worry about because we avoid the gym at all costs. You're not going to put on all this extra muscle. Well, how much creatine should a runner be taking? What's the science saying on that?
Standard clinical dose is 5 grams a day of creatine. That's the tried and tested amount that you'll see in studies.
Okay. 5 grams a day.
Extremely cheap creatine. It's you end up getting 90 servings in a tub of creatine when you buy it. It's it's not a moneymaker, is it, creatine?
No. We brought it on because we're this is an essential supplement that everyone should be using. Yeah. There's benefits for everyone, not just athletes. We know about the cognitive benefits as well. Joe's taken his degree in school and did his final project on the cognitive effects of creatine. So we both read tons of studies and summaries of studies about the benefits. So even the average person can benefit from taking it.
Yeah, it's just no, go on.
No, I was just going to say, and what are the cognitive benefits of taking creatine for those who haven't been that close to the research or read those articles about it? What are the benefits that the science is showing?
So there, most specifically, there's 2 areas. It really seems to assist cognitive performance tasks following fatigue, whether that's sleep deprivation or exercise-induced fatigue or just neural fatigue from working. After we get into a fatigued state, the brain has a tougher time producing the required energy needs to cognitively process optimally. And in the exact same way I spoke out earlier about clicking fingers, creatine phosphate, phosphocreatine, when you take creatine monohydrate, it increases the storage of creatine in your brain, which then allows you to produce more energy for cognition. And like by weight, the brain is the body's most metabolically demanding organ. It actually uses 20% of your energy needs. So the brain is like a massively cognitively demanding area. So basically, stripped down to really basic, creatine gives your brain more energy would be like the really basic way of putting it.
And then you mentioned that. So where I was going with this when you mentioned this was it helps you concentrate, stay on task. Could there be an angle where during an endurance event, your brain is always searching for a way or a reason to quit? Having more creatine available in the brain that helps you maybe not quit as soon, or sending off those red flags and have the mind say, hey, listen, you don't have to, slow me down just right now. I can keep on going. Is there any truth to that potentially?
This is exactly what I said earlier.
We were talking about this. Yeah.
I was like, if there is a benefit, which there are some preliminary studies, I believe that says that there is, why wouldn't you want to be taking something that's going to help you maintain your focus throughout these longer sessions? Like when I'm out there doing close to a 2-hour run, that first hour, you're like feeling that the runner's high and you're all excited. And then you're another 20 minutes in, you're like, all right, this is kind of getting a bit monotonous. And you're like another 20 minutes and you're like, hey, am I home yet? All those thoughts where your body's like, can there be a benefit to taking creatine to help with that lack of like focus in your run? And
well, cognitive fatigue is often associated with a decline in motivation, and physical fatigue accompanies cognitive fatigue. So if we can buffer cognitive fatigue, which there is an emerging plethora of studies that support that creatine does buffer cognitive fatigue, it's not a long shot to make the assumption that we may see benefits in exercise fatigue neurologically.
Yeah. So I just take it because I'm like, you know what?
Yeah. And I never heard it explained as well as you two just explained creatine. I've read the articles, never really kind of dove in and made that linkage. Something has been on my mind, so I'm definitely going to give creatine a try. I'm going to add it to the training block and into the training curriculum and see what actually happens. My friend Flores, I mentioned earlier, he talked a little bit about creatine on a couple of his episodes, and I probably just wasn't listening to it that closely at that point in time, and it didn't speak to me. But with any race that you do and you train for, and all the lessons that you learn afterwards, you kind of start searching, like, where are these little gains I can make? Like for a mid-pack runner, an older runner like me, I train every day. I recover pretty well. I seem to eat really well. What am I missing during these races? Hey, well, the first one is don't pick races where it's full sun and 80 degrees Fahrenheit all the time. I seem to do a really bad job with that, especially after coming out of a winter. Yeah, it's different if it's a summertime. But what are some of the like small benefits that I just overlooked? And the second thing you mentioned there was electrolytes. So maybe talk to us about electrolytes. What are we missing, or what are we not doing with electrolytes?
For sure. So when we sweat, we lose electrolytes from the body. Now, your 4 electrolytes are sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So when we sweat between 0.5 and 2 liters of sweat each hour, depending on how heavily we're sweating. Within each liter of sweat, you can lose up to 3 grams of sodium. Like typically you won't lose that much, but you might on average lose between 1 and 2 grams of sodium in every liter that you sweat. You also lose up to 200 milligrams of potassium, up to 60 calcium, up to 20 to 40 magnesium. But you are hemorrhaging sodium when you sweat. So if you're training for a long time, you are going to become very depleted in those electrolytes. Now, those electrolytes, particularly sodium and potassium, are required for your muscles to contract. So when the brain decides, okay, I'm going to start running, the muscle has to contract, but there's a neurological signal that makes those muscles contract. That neurological signal, when stripped down to the minute physiology of it, is due to the passing of potassium and sodium across the membrane of a neuron, the cell that sends the signal. So if you are massively out of balance because you've been sweating for hours, you literally cannot optimally get your muscles to do their job. So in really extreme cases, when you become very depleted in electrolytes, you start to see like systemic issues
like hyponatremia, and especially for people doing ultras or marathons, even in high heat, or you do those 50 to 100 mile trail runs. You see an increasing number of people ending up dropping or getting hospitalized for hyponatremia because they're not taking in enough electrolytes during that run, or they're water loading. Like you see a lot of people water loading before these races in the days leading up to the race, thinking I'm getting hydrated, but now you've just infused your body with all this water without actually adding in any electrolytes to that, and that causes problems.
Yeah, there has to be a base level of electrolytes within the body. When it becomes depleted enough, it can cause some pretty serious problems. So something that kind of gets me is that a lot of people seem to want to take electrolyte drinks that don't need them. But if you are a runner and sweating, it is a good supplement to consider. If you are not sweating and not a runner, you do not need to be taking an electrolyte supplement. So this has kind of led to something that irritates me a little bit about hydration powders on the market that don't contain any sodium. So they you'll see many brands, if you actually look at the label, they don't have any sodium in them. So you could go thinking, oh, I'm getting really well hydrated, but meanwhile, you're not getting any of the electrolytes you need. So that's kind of something that's come out about. A lot of brands tout that you need a hydration supplement, but you just don't unless you're an athlete. So ours is actually designed to replenish what's lost, whereas many aren't. And they're just trying to be marketed at people that should use it every day. And that's not the case unless you're exercising.
That is fascinating. And I'm with you. I do see that. I see folks who aren't really training. They're not really endurance athletes, and they have these electrolyte drink mixes that they're going for. And it's like, what do you think is going on? And then you're right. Runners who are out sweating in the sun are just drinking water, and they're wondering why their muscles aren't contracting.
Yeah.
Why do I get that cramp every time?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. That is cool. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, there's beverages out there that also are a mixture of electrolytes with carbohydrate. That's something we're actually currently developing. We have developed it. It's just about to go into production. So, when we started our business, we started it with just protein powder because that was like our main annoyance with the market as far as supplements go in Canada. We were like, there just isn't enough good tasting variety of plant-based protein. Of course, we've moved into a wide variety of other supplements now, but we as athletes ourselves need that carb beverage too. So we're going to introduce a beverage that has the electrolytes and the carbs so that you can perform like your absolute best. And I actually got to try it during one of my runs. It was awesome. No like GI distress whatsoever. No like lack in performance or anything. It's really, really exciting to be able to bring that out. And again, you see these carb beverages out there that just don't have electrolytes in them. And you're like, why?
Ideal, yeah. You have to use 2 supplements then.
Yeah. So you're going to have to mix stuff and especially if they have a flavor, you don't be mixing like random flavors together. So we're going to be bringing that out. But our current one that we have now doesn't have carbs, and we still use it every single day, the two of us, because we're both recreational athletes. And we've been hearing, lots of great things about other recreational athletes and other elite athletes that are using it regularly too. So, yeah. Yeah.
And like I've said this before, but like most of our products are designed for the exercising individual.
Yeah.
Like most of our products are designed for people that are actually wanting to like see, support an actual performance. But we don't manufacture or sell anything that isn't grounded in scientific backing. So we only sell protein, creatine, greens, and hydrate, and the carb thing that's coming because they all work. We don't sell fat burners. We don't sell BCAAs. We don't sell any of those things.
Test boosters.
Because they don't work. And that's not what we're about. Like, we're trying to be, we want to be only using things that we use ourselves.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. We had Alex Hutchinson on a few times, a couple times on the podcast, and we asked him the question of, like, when you dig into this science, what are the one or two things that you would bet your money on that gives the performance boost to an athlete? And he mentioned a couple, like, of course, caffeine. The second one was nitrates that come from beets. And then the third thing was soda loading, like baking soda, but being very careful with that. A lot of science on those three things that if you do it right at the right time and be very careful about it, can really influence athletic performance. But what you're talking about, and what we talked about this episode, is a great episode, is more like the foundational stuff, the stuff that you can build on, and then you layer on a couple things here and there, like timing caffeine during a run, or if someone really wants to soda load before a big race, not this guy. I don't want to end up in the washroom.
I've heard the stories.
But these are more the foundational things. And where I was going with the carbohydrates, it's in the last year, you see these great athletic performances led by, like, David Roach. He's going to be running Western States this weekend, and he is like a scientist of exploring how many grams of carbs can a trail runner, take in during an event. And I think he's upwards of like 130, 140 grams an hour.
Close, yeah.
Which is,
it makes complete sense, because the rate limiting factor of high intensity exercise is glycogen depletion. That's why we can't often sustain a set level anymore. So if he can consume enough on those runs to offset that, he's able to run at a way higher intensity than another runner, which is super cool.
And his secret was, I don't know if you heard this, but his secret was bypass the tongue. So you got to take the gel, and if you just shoot the gel off the back of your mouth, bypass the tongue, you won't get tired of taking gels. And I tried it during a couple of races.
I did hear that.
Yeah, it does work.
I did hear that during one of your episodes I was listening to. And so I luckily have one of the iron stomachs so far, but I also don't like super carb load during my training to the point where maybe it would start causing that. I haven't experimented with going up as high as like 130 grams. So
it's a lot, isn't it?
But I have considered that if I started getting kind of sick.
Is that per hour?
Yeah.
It's 500 calories an hour.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot. Yeah.
You really got to be moving at the right heart rate to be needing that. Wow. Like, when I'm running a marathon, if I'm running 150, 155 beats per minute, that'd be pretty good. I think these folks are up like maybe 180 beats a minute. Like, they're really revving that engine.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Burning through it. Yeah. I feel like too, during those longer training sessions, if you're training in like a zone 2 or whatever, you probably don't need as many carbs. So, but if you're going to do that training of your stomach to try and ingest that many carbs, then I think that over the tongue thing sounds like a good idea.
Well, we'll have to keep giving it a try. I know I've increased my carbs from about, like I said, 20 grams per hour. It explains everything and why I failed in all my marathons. I got up to about 60, 70 in London. And I did embark in London. Like, I slowed down, not because I wasn't taking enough energy in. It was just a hot day. And I just, I experimented in London. I set my watch on time of day, and I just kind of ran by feel. I wanted to see how I would run pace wise, just by like not paying attention to pace. And it was like an exact linear degradation that had to do exactly with the temperature outside. It got hot, and my pace slowed down, like almost like a clock. It was hilarious. It was eye-opening, but it was more for fun. We were there to, just experience the London Marathon. Harvey mentioned he was a little hard on himself because, training all winter in Canada and showing up in hot weather, that's tough. But the London Marathon, there was so many costumes. Everyone's running around in a costume. That's where, if I go back, I'm wearing a costume.
Yeah, what are you going to dress up as?
That's a good
Can you imagine
question.
the heat inside that costume, though? God, it'd be awful.
I saw Elvis pass me. I think a couple folks were dressed up like Jesus. I saw the mystery machine. 4 guys dressed up like Shaggy, Scooby Doo, and with the mystery machine, and they had to be hot. I saw Big Ben. I saw everything. It looked like a great party, and they all beat me with my time. So I'm like, they had a costume on. It was hot, and they still beat me. I got to figure something else out.
For sure. Oh my God.
You know what, guys? We've covered so much on this episode. This is such a great episode. And, when I pull this together, what is one thing that you hope a new runner or an experienced runner takes away from this episode? Like, what's one thing that, if they know nothing about nutrition, what is one thing that they should maybe pay attention to?
Get the basics right.
Yeah, even though when I did speak about those basics, it came off as quite complicated. Within half an hour to an hour of a bit of research, if you can get that down, get that caloric intake set, get that macronutrient split set, and eat a good diverse diet of fruit and vegetables, you're getting the same nutrient intake as an elite athlete. If you get that down, then all you got to do then is your running programming. You've got it all in place. Mm-hmm. It's worth taking that time to get that stuff solidified, and it's not super complicated. It sounds it when you try and describe it in a conversation,
but use the calculator.
But yeah, use our calculator is a great way, but I still would advise, like, as well, on top of that, learning how to basically calculate it for yourself as well, just so you have a rough understanding. But super useful, and that goes for any athlete out there of any caliber doing anything. If you get that nailed down, your nutrition's taken care of, and it doesn't need to be super complicated. And then you don't need to listen to the latest fad that comes out that has you going all protein or all fat or no carb. And just get it right, do what's supported by the research and what most athletes out there do, and you'll be absolutely fine.
Get the basics right. And you guys are right on. And you think of the 3 main buckets in life. You got nutrition, you got training, you got your rest and recovery. So there's like 3 legs, and then every now and then you sneak in a race. But if you are doing the foundation right on those 3, that stool is going to be solid and you can keep building upon it. So I love that advice. Where can folks find more about Thrive Protein?
So we're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. So you can find us on Instagram at Thrive_protein. And then on Facebook as well, our website, thriveprotein.ca. We have our whole Thrive story about why we started our business, about us personally. And you can also learn about all different supplements that we carry as well. We have lots of great fitness and nutrition blogs that are targeted at runners. There's stuff about VO2 max. There's stuff about protein timing, if it matters or not. There's lots about creatine. We've got comparisons between different types of protein powders. And we've got the calculator as well. We also have a Run Your Fastest 5K guide that Joe wrote. That is a fantastic piece of work. It's got tons of science-based training information that helps explain why you're doing certain levels of intensity, when you're doing them, different workouts, and that's free on our website. And then we're also going to offer the Renegade listeners a discount as well using the code Renegade at the checkout. You can get 20% off of your purchase. So if you find something that you like or something that you've heard today that you feel like you could use in your training, then we'd love for you to try our products and experience them for yourself. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And Renegade listeners, that's 20% off Thrive Protein, all the great products they have with the code Renegade. Gillian, Joe, thank you for that. And you know what? Thank you for coming on, sharing the Thrive story. We have a lot of listeners in Canada. We got a lot of listeners in the United States. And actually, when I look at sometimes the podcast breakdown, it's amazing how many listeners from all across the world. But what we love, what you said is, it's a company that's founded in the principles of health and benefit, coming from real plants, real food, not the synthetics. This is the stuff that it's not fad. It works. I was introduced to Thrive Protein. One of my friends I work with, Bryce, he's like, "Hey, look what I have," and it was like a little protein. It was an Ultimate Greens package, and I'm like, "Hey, what is that?" So sampled it with me. I'm like, hey, this stuff's pretty good. And we started talking about it. And he's like, you should have them on your podcast. And I'm like, I'm going to reach out to them. So that's how I reached out to you. And then I know you made the offer of, I think, speaking to Rachel Hanna. And Rachel going to be coming on the podcast pretty soon.
That's great. That's so
And,
fun.
You're a biggest fan.
I saw Rachel Hanna once at one of the races we were sponsoring here in Collingwood, the VO2 10K. So that's coming up this fall too. It's a great race, and it was like torrential downpour, highest winds you've ever seen. It was the third week in October. It was absolutely terrible weather, and
I didn't finish.
And Joe dropped out of the race.
Joe,
and
I didn't have to finish.
I was like, no.
I strained an intercostal muscle.
Okay.
And basically couldn't move.
He just disappeared. He went past me at the around the 6K split, and he was supposed to come back another 4K, and he just disappeared. And I'm like, all right, he's gone. But Rachel, she ran an amazing time. It was definitely like somewhere under 36 minutes, which is nowhere near her personal best, by the way.
That day,
it's way
the
faster.
weather was so bad.
But I was just beside myself. I was like, who is this woman? And that's so fun that you're bringing her on.
She's setting so many records, her PBs, like you can see her racing all the time. And I think when I reached out to her, it was on a Sunday afternoon, and she's like, oh yeah, I'll have to come on the podcast. And I didn't even know this. That morning she won around the bay. So she's like, she raced around the bay in Hamilton. And then she's talking, answering email in the afternoon, like, yeah, I'll come on the podcast. And I'm like, wait a second. You just won around the bay. We're going to have a great conversation with Rachel and understand that. But you know what? We really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I really love your podcast.
Yes.
I use it all the time when I'm doing my cross training. It is so fun. I listen to all your episodes while I'm doing my elliptical sessions because I'm like, oh, I hate the elliptical. So
it's been fun. We work both together, and so we're pretty busy. And every now and then we try to get one or two conversations in a month. And we've had amazing luck over the last 2 years of just getting some great guests, and we got more great guests lined up. And then it's fun because once they come on the podcast, they're like friends. So like Hutchinson's coming back on to talk about his new book.
You get somebody the second time because
I love Alex Hutchinson.
You get really into the detail.
Great.
Second podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And we would love to have you back on and dive even deeper. And we'd definitely like to have you back on both, and we can dive deeper into those subjects.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for having us. It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah.
If for any reason you need any of the supporting literature from some of the things I said today, I'm more than happy to provide it. I dropped some
links and
fairly
whatever,
heavy bits of science at the time, but I don't know. Like my background is from sports science, so I'm quite into that kind of stuff. So sorry if it was a bit too detailed, but if you need any bits of references or anything for people to check it out on their own, just let me know.
We thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we set off to explore what it means to be a runner, a human, all in that curious quest of being just a little bit better tomorrow. If you enjoy our Renegade content, we'd really appreciate your support and engagement by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'd also love to hear from you. If you have a show topic, a guest, or a general comment, drop us an email, runegadepodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.